Lisa,
Yes, baby girl.
when I grow up, I want to be a womanist to society.
Then so shall you be. Hey, this is Lisa Landry. Welcome back to Well Menace to Society. I have the great privilege of speaking with Nanine McCool. Hey, Nanine.
Hi, how are you, Lisa?
I'm fantastic. I'm really happy to speak with you because I've been a fan of yours for quite some time. I noticed you on Facebook a few years ago, and then I'm on Twitter and I see this video of this little woman standing up to a towering giant, and I think, hey, that's Nanine McCool with Tony Robbins.
Yeah, in profile, I'm pretty unmistakable.
What was going through your mind? You're on a jumbotron, and this guy is minimizing your reality and intimidating you physically. What was going through your mind?
Well, I'm really not a small woman. I'm 5'8", so that's just how big he is. He's huge.
Wow.
Yeah, he's 6'7". He blocks out the sun. Um, but honestly, I don't. When I was up there and going through that with him, I was completely focused on what got me to stand up in the first place, which was what he was saying about the Me Too movement. And so I don't, it was unpleasant. I was triggered, but, I had all my energy was going to focusing on what he was saying so that I could say what I wanted to say. It was afterwards that, all the emotional stuff really came crashing in.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
But he's a big guy. He's a big guy. When he stepped up to me that first time and looked down at me, it triggered me. And I think that's what's interesting about listening to other people who watch the video, who, they see the outward, but the inward was in complete turmoil.
Yeah, I'm sure. I've experienced a lot of situations in my life where you are just speaking your truth to a man who doesn't want to hear it. And so he tries to physically intimidate you as if you're not making sense when your words are making more sense than his own words. So I think a lot
Yeah.
of people were triggered, especially women watching that.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot to learn from the video because all that's true. And what Tony Robbins did for us there was this put on display so much of what women have to just take in stride every day. And, that's just their normal. And finally, thank you, Butterscotch, who took the video, had the wherewithal to take the video, now it's been on display. So, to me, I think that that's really the power of that video is it really does show what women have to put up with. They're a little bit extreme there. I mean, he did, he was trying to make a point, and he did it very poorly. And the pushing exercise clearly did not go over well with anyone, including me. But just his attitude, the interrupting the talking and word salad to try and distract from the fact that he didn't really want to hear what I had to say. I think women have to put up with that at work all the time. I mean, almost everywhere. Even at parties, you have to put up with that.
Yeah, it's true.
I think what's really frightening is that I think Tony Robbins' brand of misogyny is very, very normal. I think it's the normal. I think we're inured to it because it is what he doesn't see himself as misogynist. He sees himself as someone who loves women and respects women, and I think that's true of most men who are also have internalized this sort of normalized misogyny. I think that's what's so dangerous about Tony Robbins' brand of misogyny is that it is so normal. He does not, there are there have been lots of YouTube videos of people who are truly misogynistic. All you do is go on YouTube and Google Tony Robbins and Me Too, and you will encounter misogyny at its worst. But with all his fans, coming up with these just hateful things, and the trolls, who say the horrible things about women on Facebook or on my YouTube channel. So that's misogyny. I think Tony Robbins is just kind of your typical, wealthy, successful white male. That's a very normal kind of misogyny. Not that we should tolerate it, but that's what makes it so hard to fight.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are turned off to how prevalent misogyny actually is. And a lot of women don't recognize that we're doing it to each other and ourselves as well. There's so much
Absolutely.
ingrained
It's,
misogyny.
yeah, it's internalized. We grew up in it, and we've learned to to just see ourselves through this veil of we have to look a certain way to please men. We have to behave a certain way to please men. Our sisters, our friends, our female friends are all essentially at some level competitions for the attention and the approval of men. And I see it all the time. I see it everywhere, and I see it on Facebook from women who themselves are, on a journey to become empowered, and we're all still sort of oblivious to this misogyny.
Yeah, I think,
which is what the victimizing is about, right? That's why what was really got me out of my chair was him shaming victims, and I'm tired of that. And unfortunately, we've all been trained to shame ourselves if we're survivors, right? We've been trained to say, "Oh, I'm not a victim; I'm a survivor."
right.
Well, I'm done with that, because that's just more victim shaming.
That kind of makes sense in a way, because why should you be labeled by something you were forced to survive by somebody else's predatory instincts?
Well, the word victim means that something was done to you against your will, and right. I mean, that's the fact.
Mm-hmm.
If you were raped, if you were sexually abused, sexually assaulted, that you were a victim, right? And so that instance, that physical instance of being assaulted, is just one moment of that being a victim. There's a psychological impact. There's an emotional impact. And all of that lasts past the event itself, and it requires recovery. But that moment, all of that becomes a part of who you are. And it has that the injury is harmful to ourselves. And like PTSD, it is harmful to yourself. But it doesn't, to say I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor, is to not allow yourself to recognize those moments when you are responding to that old injury, where that emotional trauma is, rising up. And if you won't acknowledge it, then it's going to run you instead of you running it. So that's why I'm when he triggered me in that stadium, my victim was up and running inside. It had me emotionally. It had me psychologically. I was struggling because the part of me that was victimized in my youth was very much awake and aware, trying to save me. And that's the other thing about the victim in you. It will do everything it can to save you, so don't deny it. Just don't when you won't address it, that's when the bad stuff happens with that victim mentality, the victim in you that's trying to save you. That's the bad part. But we've all been taught that. Don't be a victim. I can't help it. Somebody did it to me. That's my response now. Can't help it. Somebody did it to me.
You are definitely a victim rights advocate, which is how you first came to my attention.
Yeah, I think that being a victim of sexual abuse and violence in my home really did propel me in my life to stand up for people who couldn't for themselves. Because of course I relate to that, that child that I was that couldn't fight for myself. So it was important to me to do that for those, who can't. And it's still very much part of who I am, for better or worse.
That got you into trouble, though, didn't it? In family court.
Yes, it did. It's gotten me into trouble often in my life. It's just family court was one that to me was so. It was really. I don't know what the right word is. I was just so disappointed because I think my religion actually was, and justice for all. The rule of law was pretty much what I based my whole life around, was a sense of that's what makes this country so great. That's what separates us from chaos. and dictatorship and fascism and, all the isms is our rule of law. And, you know what family court is like. There's no rule of law in there. There's only rule of judges. Then for the Louisiana Supreme Court to not be concerned about the law, but only concerned about punishing me for criticizing judges, I just lost faith in the entire system.
And that's basically what happened. You criticized judges, and you started a social media campaign advocating on behalf of 2 little girls who were being victimized.
Well,
most probably.
The thing is, and as a lawyer, I had done everything that I could do to help that mom protect her children. And the judges were not, they weren't doing their job. They were absolutely refusing to do what the law required them to do. And when the judges are non-responsive, when the judges themselves are not doing what they're supposed to do, what's left to you but to cry out to the public? Because this is a country that's supposed to be, for the people, of the people, and by the people, not the judges. So yeah, but I just want to say, I had the luxury of being able to stand on principle and lose my license. I could have said I was sorry at any time. I could have bowed my head and made, accepted that I was wrong, and they would have probably suspended me, maybe not even suspended me, just, sort of slapped me on the wrist and given me sanction, public censure. But I had the privilege of being able to just stand my ground on the principle that was so important to me, that they were wrong, that what they were doing is horrific. And I had that privilege because my husband was quite willing to let me not make any money. And I have a husband who's willing to put a roof over my head. I mean, he's very supportive, and I know that a lot of attorneys and a lot of women in particular don't have that luxury.
It does make a difference.
But it was a privilege.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's good to have a partner who respects the fact you're willing to blow up your practice over
well,
principle.
I never made a lot of money as a lawyer anyway, because I was always, giving my time away for free, because that's the other horrible thing about family court is that it breaks people financially, and it's a little cottage industry that surrounds it. So there's all these people who want to make their buck off these suffering, and the cases that are the most lucrative are the ones that are the most horrible. All these professionals, making their money off the suffering, and the ones that are the most lucrative, the cases that are most lucrative, are the ones that are the most horrific, the ones that involve allegations of sexual abuse, domestic violence, and that involves at least one parent who is completely is either sociopathic, psychopathic, serious personality disorder. There's some serious dysfunction, but they generate the most conflict, and therefore these people make the most money. And these are children. People are fighting for their children.
I would think if your child is being molested or raped by his father or her father, you would pay any money that you don't have, can get your hands on, just to protect your baby. And that person's just
everything they have.
Yeah, they're just making money off that suffering and not actually standing up for the kids like you did. I mean, you went for it. I read the Bloomberg Law document, and you did not back down. You made it very clear that you had a different understanding of how the law was going to take care of these children.
Yeah, I did. I was so I couldn't. Initially, I just couldn't believe that is blatant. I've done a lot of those cases, and they were very frustrating because, as in any situation where you have violence in the home, it's very difficult to prove. I had never had a case with so much evidence as that one. It was just blatant. There was no question. These children were telling everyone who would listen about this game they were playing with their father. They were drawing pictures. They were acting out. It was caught on video. They told the therapist. They told the evaluators. They told everyone, and no one would listen to them. It was so frustrating to me that these judges made up their mind early based on no evidence at all, and then absolutely refused to consider that they got it wrong. You read the transcript from that trial, which put quotations around marks around it, for that custody. It like plays off of some bad reality show. It's so bad.
I don't think people recognize the possibilities of that happening, because we do have this idea that we live in a free society and that our children will be protected because we have CPS to get involved, we have police stations that will get involved, we have social workers. And yet the reality that I'm coming to understand is that all of these agencies that are entrusted to protect these children turn a blind eye and will actually advocate on the sociopath's behalf many times.
Well, they're very good. They're very good at what they do. They're very charming. And those positions, all those agencies that are supposed to protect children, attract people who are not interested in protecting children, but they're interested. I'm not saying they all are that way, but it's just like any profession. It always attracts people who are interested in gaining power over a particular set of people. So you get police officers who are not really interested in protecting people. They have power and control issues. And then you get judges with the same problem. You get attorneys with the same problem. You get social workers with the same issues about, it's not about the children, it's about power control over other people's lives. And there's no transparency and there's no accountability. And there's this presumption by the public that they're professionals and they're trained and it's the United States of America, so it all must be good. And it's so, and that's a fairy tale. That's a luxury to be able to believe that, because once you're in the system, once it's at your door, it is too late. The minute they come knocking on your door, you are no longer credible to criticize it, because then you're just criticizing it because you're guilty. That's the way it works.
Doesn't that sound like a witch hunt? Isn't that a witch hunt? I mean, I interviewed Marilyn Roach, and she is a preeminent historian on the Salem witch trials, and this seems to be the same thing. You have a judge, a magistrate. You have lawyers instead of preachers. You have social workers. It's the same dynamic of there's no actual evidence that the person being vilified has done any wrong, and yet that person is the person hung or burned at the stake.
Yes, and you know, it's a wonderful analogy, because like with witches, they would tie rocks on them and throw them in the stream, and if they rose to the surface, they were a witch, so you had to kill them. If they sank and drowned, they weren't a witch, but they were dead, right?
Yeah.
So in family court, it's the same thing. If a mother tries to protect her children, then she is making it up, that ridiculous parental alienation syndrome, which is complete junk science, and people who are trying to protect their children need to understand that. And so she's making it all up, and she's somehow mind controlling the child to get them to say all these things that are horrific. If she doesn't try to protect her child, she is complicit, and they take her child away from her for not actually protecting the child. Or, it's even more horrific, she has to send her child off to this predator for custody repeatedly, and just destroy her soul, because the child grows up hating her and sometimes idolizing the abuser, because that's the one who gives them some reward.
Well, it's
for
Stockholm
going
syndrome.
along and behaving.
Yeah, it's Stockholm
Yeah,
syndrome.
it's Stockholm syndrome. Right. So it's a lose-lose for women, and sometimes it happens. But I'm not saying that men don't get screwed in family court.
They do.
Just
They
because
do.
the law of averages says that it has to happen sometimes.
Right.
But the vast majority of times, it is a woman trying to protect her children.
So why aren't the judges seeing that? I mean, because this has been ongoing now. I've spoken with women around the country who've been advocating for changes in this system for 20 years. Why aren't the courts seeing this? I mean, like, why? This is obviously a problem.
We've come full circle with the misogyny, because it is the misogyny in the courts. Even it's so entrenched. If you're a victim of domestic violence, even if there's no custody involved, and you go to court just to get a protective order, there is a certain level of hostility to that woman because there's this perception that she did it to herself.
You'll marry him. You'll picked him. It's your fault. You chose him.
Exactly. And how many times are you going to take him back? You just know you're going to take him back. Well, of course they end up having to take him back because they get no support from the community. They get nothing from the community to help them actually stay away. I could tell so many stories of women who lost their jobs trying to get away,
that kind of happened to me. I was dating somebody very abusive in Hollywood, and I moved to a different state, and he still came at me, threatening to rape and kill me, going around talking trash about me to anybody who would listen, peers, all that kind of stuff. Character assassination, right, is what they call it. And I couldn't file a restraining order against him because I knew it would be used against me in a different aspect where I'd be judged for picking him. So you're caught. You're caught in this place of there's nowhere for you to be protected, and
no. God forbid you have children. God forbid you have children with that perpetrator. Being involved with someone who's abusive is never easy, and getting away is never easy.
Yeah.
But if you have children with them, it is horrific. It's just horrific. That child becomes a weapon. You have to watch the child suffer. You have to watch the courts use that child against you to manipulate and control you. They allow the perpetrator to use the child to manipulate and control you through the process itself. People listening who've never been through this are going to think that we're both a pair of paranoid wackos.
Crazy bitches. Crazy. They're crazy. Women are crazy. They're just emotionally responding to things that don't exist because they're crazy.
Right. We're man haters. And the fact is I love men. I have a wonderful husband. The men in my life are good men in my life. I'm lucky. And a lot of the judges on the benches aren't men. They're women, and they're worse than the men in many cases because of the internalized misogyny. So, until you've been there, until you sat in the judge's chamber and listened to the things that are said off the record in the most vile ways, the bullying that goes on back there, until you've been there with your attorney telling you, if you don't go along with this, if you don't give up your rights, there's no reason, but the judge wants you to, then you're either going to never see your children again, or you're going to go to jail. Pick what goes on every day in family court. When you make that decision, okay, I have to choose one of these three, so I'm going to go with not going to jail. I'm going to go with having what little bit of my child I can get based on nothing, no evidence other than the judge has decided that's the way it's going to go.
No
you
evidence.
Agree to that, and you know what? Then you never get to challenge it. No matter how unfair it is, you agree to it. You can't appeal it. They don't tell people this. You can't appeal it. Nothing. You're stuck with it. And that goes on every day. I know a mother right now who has not seen her children for almost 2 years, and there is nothing she was held in contempt for something that wasn't even contemptible in the eyes of the law. It wasn't even based on fact. Pure garbage. And even so, it was contempt of missing a weekend, and she hasn't seen her children in 2 years because of that.
Well,
it's not even grounds under the law to deprive someone of seeing their child.
And where did this happen? Is this Louisiana or is this
here in Louisiana?
So she hasn't seen her kids for 2 years?
2 years. I just saw a post on Facebook. That's just one that I know of. They're all over. I just saw a post on Facebook 2 days ago. I just about cried. This woman clearly suicidal because she's not seen her kids. And she just doesn't know what's the point of going on. And she finally understands. Women go into this thinking that there's justice, that the courts are really going to care about the fact that they're good mothers. And somewhere, when they're down to their last dollar and their last attorney is telling them, unless you come up with $10,000, I'm not going to show up for your trial, they realize that the whole thing is rigged against them, and they lose hope. And they take their lives. It happens altogether too often. It's horrible. And there's nothing anyone is doing about it.
Why isn't the American Bar Association or the ACLU on like okay, but seriously.
Sorry.
But okay.
Misogyny. Internalized misogyny, blaming the victim. This is all seen as self-inflicted. These women have chosen men. They're unstable. They're emotionally unstable. They can't make their relationship work. So now they're lashing out at everyone around them, and it's no one's fault but their own. I'm telling you, that's what it is. Now, I'm not saying there aren't women who are great sociopaths. There are, and I've come across some, particularly lawyers. but in the court system, in the courts, there are 3% of cases in family court that involve abuse, domestic violence, sexual abuse. And those 3% of cases, by far, more often, the vast majority of cases, the perpetrator is a man. And in the vast majority of those cases, if that man sues for custody, he gets custody. Case after case after case. They're horrific. And it's misogyny, and it is internalized misogyny. It's so ubiquitous that it's invisible to most people. It's just the way things are. It's a fact. It's reality. It's the way the world works. And yet it isn't. It only works that way because people don't understand how they're a part of the problem. Women don't understand how they themselves have internalized this misogyny and now go out and promote it and cause it to continue, and they instill it in their daughters. It's just, and I don't mean that as we all do it. We have all done it at different stages in our lives.
Thank you so much, Nanine McCool. Nanine and I spoke in the spring, I believe it was, of 2018, and this podcast is just being published as we end 2019. And Tony Robbins has actually been accused, since we recorded this interview, by several women of sexual assault. Thanks so much for tuning in, y'all. Please do look for Nanine McCool. You can find her online. And you can join me at lisalandry.com. If you sign up for my YouTube channel, I would greatly appreciate that. You'll be supporting my work, and you will know when each new podcast drops every Womanist Wednesday. Shout out, Ari Bear. I hope you're cuddled up and nice and warm. It's probably really cold there tonight. I miss you.